let's not forget, the president said it's okay to let businesses not, let's delay the business mandate, the employer mandate. Let's put that off. But you little guys, y'all get stuck with
this
it.
threat of shutting down the government isn't quite so,
Republican
anymore.
Well, it's certainly not quite as Republican as Jay Carney would have you believe.
That's right. People are starting to realize now exactly where a lot of the accountability.
And it's being said in the chat, a bank account? What's that?
Oh, that's that thing other people have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
That's the thing that rich white liberals got, Richard.
Yeah. Bingo. I mean, I'm sorry, but I really don't care. Let the government shut down. They keep trying to say, you guys shouldn't listen to the Tea Party back then. You shouldn't have been trying to ruin, you shouldn't let your image get ruined by aligning yourself with a bunch of kooks that are willing to let the government shut down. Well, a lot of them people ain't Tea Party members that are calling for it to go ahead and shut down. We can't afford this right now. Some things are going to have to improve.
I mean, you and I don't even roll completely, with like everybody in the Tea Party.
But
because it's too broad of a movement for any one person to
be lined
up with everybody else.
I knew we was going to mess around and chase that rabbit all over the place. The Obamacare
thing. And we do need to move on.
Now we do. Now that we got about 10 minutes left, we can move on to the big shutdown
of one of the
Detroit, Rock City.
60 years ago, it's the richest city in the United States.
Man.
And then you know what happened?
They switched parties.
They elected a Democrat to be mayor of
Detroit.
Look,
man, at one time, just about all of our auto manufacturing in this country was done in that place. The Motor City, man. You know how much industry was centered right there in that one city. It was thriving 60 years ago. And a Democrat mayor comes in. Progressive ideas start being kicked around. Fewer and fewer conservatives are becoming elected. Fewer and
unions.
One of the reasons though that fewer and fewer conservatives were getting elected, because there were fewer and fewer conservatives willing to stay in Detroit. They just said, "You guys can have it." And look what happens. 60 years later.
60 years of progressive, humongous government. But you know what, man? Somehow, because the mainstream media says it, therefore it must be true.
Right.
Somehow, this is the fault of the GOP.
You remember during the 2012 election cycle, the Democrats made a huge deal about saying Mitt Romney would have had Detroit file for or would have had the automotive industry file for bankruptcy, and it would have killed it. But Obama saved the automobile industry, so they never had to file for bankruptcy. Now the entire flipping city of Detroit had to file for bankruptcy, and the automobile industry was darn near just demolished. Pontiac ain't even here, man. And what about Saturns?
Somehow, a Republican done that.
And you want proof? You want proof that that the Republicans are getting blamed for this? This is hysterical. Listen to this. Ed Schultz from MSNBC, ladies and gentlemen.
Michigan used to be really a symbol of industrial strength and manufacturing in this country. But thanks to a lot of Republican policies, the city is now filing for bankruptcy. Now, it's the largest public sector bankruptcy in U.S. history, and the consequences could be devastating if you care about people. The already small force of police, firefighters, and EMTs are in danger of future layoffs. That's only going to make it worse. Roughly 30,000 retired workers are concerned about their pensions, things that they're counting on. Make no mistake, Detroit is going bankrupt is exactly what the Republicans want. They outsource manufacturing jobs, attack unions, cut public services, and this is the result. Now they can wipe the slate clean because now they can start privatizing city assets. It is no surprise Michigan Governor Rick Snyder is behind the bankruptcy filing. And, of course, the Republican governor said on Friday bankruptcy would do what? It would be great for Detroit?
This is a last resort. It's something I would have preferred to avoid. But now that it's here, this is the way to solve the problem. This is about 60 years of decline. 60 years in many cases of kicking the can down the road, not being realistic and not solving the problem of Detroit's major issues, which are debt and better services to citizens. So in bankruptcy, that's the focus. We have an opportunity now to deal with $18 billion in liabilities, and even more importantly than the debt question is, there's an opportunity now to say, how do we get better services to citizens? They deserve it.
Oh, it just sounds so easy, doesn't it, Governor? The governor of Michigan, Snyder, says that he wants to improve public services, but he's doing the exact opposite. Earlier this year, Snyder appointed emergency city manager Kevin Orr, who has taken over Detroit's finances. This, bottom line here, is an unelected official who began selling off public assets and slashing public services. Detroit has just 1/3 of its ambulances in operation. The average emergency response time for police in the city is 58 minutes. And when you have horrible public services, no one wants to live in the city, which means less tax revenue to fix all of the problems and the needs of the public. It is a very vicious cycle. It's the Republican way, and Snyder's emergency city manager is to blame. Orr's job was to save Detroit from collapse. He failed miserably, and now he gets to manage the bankruptcy. One of his major targets in this bankruptcy is public pensions.
Pensions have been at the forefront more acutely in the past 8 years when we borrowed $1.45 billion supposedly to fix the pension issue back in 2005. We're going to all treat both classes of creditors equally. Secured will get paid in full, but unfortunately because of the dire circumstances and the magnitude of the debt, we simply can't treat all unsecured as being paid in full, and they're going to all have to participate in some form of adjustment, and that includes pensions.
So bottom line here is that the city made a commitment they can't live up to, so it's the workers' fault. On Friday, a judge in Lansing, Michigan, ruled that the bankruptcy was unconstitutional. It violates state law to lessen public pension benefits. There's going to be a fight. Short time later, Michigan Attorney General challenged the judge's ruling. It's possible this fight could go all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court. I think you can count on it. For more, let's turn to Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator.
Let's don't turn to Bernie. Let's just talk about Ed for a minute here. Let me get this straight, Ed. 60 years of Democrat policies, 60 years of a city entirely run by Democrats.
And unions.
And unions. Well, I ain't even got to the unions yet. And it's this one guy who was brought in to save the city of Detroit.
And he's, okay, now get this. This is after 60 years of Democratic malfeasance, just to, kind of point out what Marty's saying here. 60 years of disastrous policies, and one dude is supposed to ride in on a white horse and make it all go away.
Well,
he saw,
and the thing is,
uncomfortable.
The thing is he saw the problem. He identified the problem, and that's where things got squirrely. The biggest problem he identified was what, Case? Said it in one word.
Debt.
Well, pensions.
Well, pensions, yeah.
Pensions. That's where the debt came from. Pensions. Now, What is it about those pensions? See, Ed wants to say, so, it's the workers' fault. Yeah, Ed, right. You hit the nail on the head. I cannot believe I'm agreeing with Ed Schultz. Now, Ed was being sarcastic. But yes, Ed, it's absolutely the workers' fault. Every worker who is a member of those unions that extorted those outlandish pension plans from the city by threatening to shut down if the city didn't comply. After 60 years of that, by the way, 60 years where every single year more money was being extorted from this city by its fellow Democrats, demanding that they pay these exorbitant amounts. The automobile industry up there in Detroit was one of the highest paid jobs in this country as far as regular,
in salary and benefits. The average auto worker made $130,000 a year.
Now, call me nutty, but if you drive up the cost of labor, you drive up the cost of product, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's unavoidable.
Now, the cost to build said product, maybe not so high once you get into, when you got so many of that mass production thing. Mr. Ford, he worked real hard on perfecting that so that it would be cheaper, by mass production, right? Well,
economy of scale.
They got robots and everything that do most of those jobs. Really, the people more or less have to, stand by and make sure the robots don't malfunction. I mean, the janitor there at Ford Motor Company or General Motors was making like $19 an hour to run a little scrubber around a toilet rim or drop one of them toilet mints down in a urinal. Now,
don't forget, he had to empty the garbage can too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, it was these people who are wanting to make these outlandish salaries and retire fatter than anybody. These people, the public workers, those public services that Ed was crying about, the police and the firemen and the paramedics and everybody. Look, man, I'm sorry, but you guys, y'all ruined it. You made the cost of paying you so high that the city could no longer afford it. You want to talk about people leaving the city so that they can't tax you anymore. They can't get that tax revenue anymore when people leave the city. Well, it was the workers in that city and the Democratic leadership from behind in that city that drove that city into bankruptcy. Extortion did that.
Why is it that when you say Democratic leading from behind, it sounds proctological?
Because it is.
I thought so.
It is very proctological. I guarantee you, you ask anybody up in the city of Detroit, what hurts the most about you? They'll tell you, they're behind.
Mm-hmm. They're tired of being led up the behind.
Well, yeah, Ed, it is the workers' fault. It is every single person that lives in the city of Detroit that has allowed this. You know what? Detroit was 60 years ago. Detroit was a wealthy city. 20 years ago, Detroit was a rich city. Roughly about 4 years ago, Detroit turned hood rich. You know what hood rich is, man?
Yeah, you're one paycheck away from being broke.
Well, hood rich is where you got champagne taste and Kool-Aid money. There's even a song about hood rich. Hood rich means you can live in Section 8 housing and drive a $60,000 automobile. Hood rich means you can be on food stamps but wear a $100 pair of blue jeans. Hood rich is when you're getting your nails and your hair did but you ain't got the money to buy your baby's diapers. See, what it is all these workers, they've got it in their heads, because it's actually the progressive way of thinking, that money can just be printed, manufactured. If you don't have enough of it, well, you just make some more.